All right, now for this last example in section 4.1, we're going to, again, take a little bit closer look at the three things that we've just been talking about when we're looking at scatterplots, and we're going to talk about how we can write clear descriptions of associations. So I cheated and I went ahead and wrote these out ahead of time, so that way I can kind of talk about them instead of focusing on writing these, because we are going to see a couple of sentences for each of these different answers. So that way I can just kind of discuss them with you, and you don't have to wait for me to write everything down as we go through the video. All right, so a good description should include trend, shape, and strength. It should explain what all three of these mean in context. Remember, context is something that keeps coming up as we're going through the semester. We mentioned it in the very first section. And then we should also mention any observations that do not fit the general trend. This is kind of like our idea of outliers from the previous chapter. When we're writing our descriptions, always use phrases like tends to when describing the association, because the trend has a variability. The association you're describing may not be true for every individual. We could have some outlying values. Again, it's a general pattern, but it's not a hard and fast rule. So we want to use kind of more flexible phrasing, things like tends to. Again, also point out points that appear to be unusual or not part of the general pattern. All right, so let's look at example 1. Again, right now I have the answer covered up, and we'll kind of just pull it down as we go through and talk about this. So this figure shows, again, we're going back to our very first example, the median age of marriage for women and the median age of marriage for men. Each point shows us the typical age at which men and women marry in that state. How would you describe the association between median age of marriage for women and median age of marriage for men? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start by kind of talking about our trend. We're going to talk about our trend, and we're going to talk about our strength. So in this case, the relation between median age of marriage for women and median age of marriage for men. So we start by saying what we're talking about, right? Our relationship between our X, the age for women, and our Y, the age for men, tends to be linear, because we see a linear line here with a strong positive trend. Right? So it is positive because we are going up, and it is relatively strong because we don't have a lot of vertical spread. We don't have a lot of vertical variation. We want to put this even further into context. We could say that women who marry at an older age tend to marry men that are also at an older age. Right? So as this goes up, as the women get older, so does the age of men. So as we're going through and we're answering these questions, both for this example and the next example, we see kind of the things that we've been talking about: our shape, our trend, and our strength. Right? We see the word linear, which is our shape. We see our trend that is positive, right, increasing, and then we see that it is relatively strong. So we've kind of included all of these first three things in the first sentence. And then we kind of went a step further to explain what that means in context in the second sentence. All right, now we're going to do the same for this last example down here at the bottom. All right, this figure shows the association between the age and mileage of a sample of used cars. Each point shows us the age and mileage of one individual car. How would we describe the association between age and mileage? All right. So we start off the relation between age and mileage of used cars. So again, our relation between X and Y. We also see the word tends to, right? Because just like we did in the previous example, tends to be linear with a moderately strong positive trend. We're only seeing moderately strong because there is a little bit more scatter or vertical variation than we saw in the previous example. So we can use words rather than just strong and weak. We can throw words like moderately in there if it's somewhere kind of in between. Right? In context, this means that older cars tend to have greater mileage, right? Because as the age increases, so does the mileage. So older cars tend to have greater mileage. So again, with this answer, as in the one in the previous section, we see kind of two parts to this. We see one sentence describing our trend, strength, and shape, and then we see another sentence identifying what this means in context in our problem. And as we go into the next section and as we progress through this chapter, we are definitely going to be focusing on and talking a lot about what these scatter plots and what these equations of lines that we're going to generate, what these mean in context, because that's the whole idea of statistics, right? We want to take mathematical information and we want to use it to answer other questions. So that is definitely going to be a big focus of this chapter.